But the Adventist leaders, George Floyd, is not so much about racism, it's about Marxists forcing their anti-Christian lawlessness on everyone. My SDA Church leaders have been bending over backwards this month in order to show that they are in step with the progressive agenda. Ostensibly, it's about anti-racism. But looking at the evidence, it is not about racism as much as it is about progressives trying to create a crisis in order to get people to come over to their side. And their side is not only racist, but anti-Christian communism and pro-lawlessness. George Floyd had the police called on him by a store owner because he tried to pass a fake $20 bill. When the police arrived, he decided to not obey them, so they used force in order to make him comply. A video captured the scene where he says, "I can't breathe." He died in the vehicle on the way to the hospital. He was found to have fentanyl in his bloodstream and was coronavirus positive. The video makes it look like the officer is intentionally trying to kill Mr. Floyd. So many people got angry. This is when professionally trained Marxists jumped up and started marching, rioting, looting, and burning. Of course, many others just joined in for the thrill of it, and many more stayed totally away from it. A large portion, if not most, of the buildings that were destroyed and shops that were looted were owned by black people. And the rioters, they even killed several black people, including a retired police officer, who were all just trying to protect their property. This is how we can know positively that the George Floyd riots are not about racism. So what is the underlying belief system that is fueling these protests? Black Lives Matter is a brilliant name for a group, as anyone saying that they don't agree with them is automatically labeled racist and can get kicked off of websites or even lose their jobs. Saying the obviously correct thing as a Christian, that all lives matter, brings the same results. So what do they believe? Here are some quotes from their website. "We are self-reflexive and do the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege." What this means, cisgender means the gender you are born with. They are trying to dismantle that. So in other words, right up front they're saying they are for transgenderism. Another quote is, "We engage comrades." Well, everybody knows what philosophy drives this word comrades. And then the most reprehensible thing in their whole belief write-up is, "We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable." So they want to disrupt your family. "We foster a queer affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking, or rather, the belief that all in the world are heterosexual unless she, he, or they disclose otherwise." So they're about queers. Well, we're getting very far away from Black Lives Matter. If anyone has eyes to see and ears to hear, they can understand what's going on here. So these are just some things that show that it's not about racism. And the pictures you've just seen on your screen, they all show Seventh-day Adventists marching in support of what this anti-Christian group believes. Now, I know some of those marching, they don't know that they support that, but that is because they're being played by an organization to achieve devilish goals without even realizing it. We SDA should be vocal in denouncing such an organization, But instead, we're publicly applauding them. For what? To have the applause of men, women, queers, etc.? One SDA university has even made a scholarship in George Floyd's name, showing that they want our young people to emulate a man who was in jail several times, pointed a gun at a pregnant woman, tried to pass counterfeit money, resisted arrest, etc. Now, where was the outcry when our churches were shut down? There were 0 marches then, so by marching now, we are showing that following what the world thinks is important is more important than our churches. We are known by our actions. Now God will judge for these things. And I don't want to be anywhere near any of these Judases in God's remnant church when the slaughtering angel goes forth to do his work in Jerusalem. And Ellen White writes that will be literally fulfilled. Now Satan, he's getting all his ducks in a row, and sadly, many in our church are obliging him by lining up without him even using any force at all. What we do when all that hatred, and yes, I understand there's hatred on the conservative side too, but when all that hatred on both sides is directed at us SDAs for keeping the Sabbath of the Lord, what will we do? Instead of marching for our rights to attend church on Sabbath, here we are breaking the Sabbath by marching with the world, supporting we know not what. If we think we can follow the world in its ungodly ways now in order to be praised, and then suddenly turn and follow Jesus when they start coming for us, we're going to have a big reality check. I believe Ellen White was shown the time we are entering into and wrote about what our SDA Church would do. This is in SPTB 02, page 54. Nothing would be allowed to stand in the way of the new movement. The leaders would teach that virtue is better than vice, but God being removed, they would place their dependence on human power, which, without God, is worthless. Their foundation would be built on the sand, and storm and tempest would sweep away the structure. I'm calling on our SDA leaders, please repent and turn back to following the lowly God-man from Galilee, Jesus Christ, the one who never marched in any political event and who always stood up for the oppressed in the proper manner.